Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Little. I'm here today with another hand for PokerNews.com, and today we're going to be reviewing a hand from a $1,500 buy-in World Series of Poker Final Table Bubble. Before we get started though, if you're enjoying the videos that I make for Poker News, make sure you let them know on Poker News on Twitter. Also, click like and subscribe on YouTube. That'd be very appreciated. Let's get to it. We have King Jack offsuit as one of the chip leaders on the bubble of this tournament. And normally, you can strongly consider folding this hand. King Jack is fine, but the big offsuit hands from early position don't really play all that well. If you raise and get 3-bet, it's awful. So normally, I would fold this. But as one of the chip leaders on the bubble of the tournament, I'm going to be opening a lot of hands, way more than I normally would, especially if the opponents are playing relatively straightforward, right? If they're not getting in there and battling too hard, which they really shouldn't on the bubble, but if they are getting in there and 3-betting or jamming a lot, then I will definitely just fold this. But I do raise it up to 2,500, and well, 3 people call me. It's not what usually happens, but it's what we have this time. Flop comes King, Queen, 4, so we have top pair. But, you know, it's not the nuts. We lose to King, Queen. We lose to random pocket 4s. But if you think about it, we have a pretty good hand here because you have to presume most of the opponents with 3-bet aces, kings, queens, and ace-king. So we really lose to pocket 4s, King, Queen. And then if the big blind has King 4, Queen 4 suited, we lose to those two. But notice we have a king in our hand, so the King 4 at least is pretty unlikely. So we have the best hand here almost every time. It's always important to realize when a hand that looks, kind of marginal is actually quite good. So, pot's 11,000, and I want to make a reasonable bet. When the board contains lots of high cards, it's very easy for the opponents to connect in some way. Now, they're not going to have top pairs all that often, because I have the king, but they will have a whole lot of queens, and stuff like Jack 10 suited, or Ace Jack suited, or Ace 10 suited. Maybe offsuit, depending on how wide they call. So, I want to make a bet of about 5,000 chips that doesn't let the gut shots very easily draw, and that also extracts value from a queen. If I start betting bigger, like 27 or 7,500, then the opponents aren't going to fold the queen immediately, but they will start folding it out on the turn or the river. And I really want to do everything I can to ensure that the weaker hands stay in the pot. I don't want to check though, because, like I said, the opponents could very easily have gut shot straight draws, or open-ended straight draws, or flush draws that I want to at least get some value from, or make fold. So I do a 5,000, and only the low jack calls. Turns a jack. And now, I have the best hand almost every time, right? We lose to only ace 10, but that would be ace 10 of hearts or ace 10 of spades. That's, there's only 2 combinations of that. We lose to 10-9 and 10-9 of spades and hearts, same story. But that's it. Jack also connects well with our opponent's Queen Jack, which is nice. If he had Ace Jack, he just made a pair, which is nice. If he had Jack 10, he just made a pair, which is nice. So this is a great spot for me. We just, again, have to decide how much should we bet. And now, we really want to consider the opponent's stack size, right? So pot's 21,000. If I pretty much put in any bet, let's say 8,000 even, that's going to make the pot go up to, 37,000 on the river, and the opponent's going to have 24,000 behind. And that's fine. Gives our opponent a nice 2/3 pot bet that we can jam on the river. If we bet 16,000 though, notice that 16,000 starts to make our opponent's stack feel at risk, right? He only has 32,000, so you're going to find that when you make people put in half of their stack, they start to tighten up a little bit. And that's just because they're like, ugh, do I really want to put in half my stack here with, even a hand like Ace Queen on the bubble? And it's a bad spot to be in, that's for sure. So I want to do everything in my power to make my opponent feel comfortable with the marginal made hands, while also not giving draws an amazing price to try to outdraw me. So I do go 8,000, and I like that. You could also check if you just know your opponent's going to bet every time, but I don't think we can know our opponent's going to bet every time, especially given the opponent should have a lot of queens and now jacks. Like I said, those hands definitely want to be checking behind, and I definitely don't want to go check. I want to get money in the pot. River is a 5, about as blank as it can come. Now we have to decide if we want to go all in or check. So we also have the option of making a tiny bet, but I don't really think a tiny bet makes much sense unless you know your opponent will call it like every time with the marginal made hands, but will fold to an all-in every time with the marginal made hands. And I don't think it's necessarily true. Also, notice the small bet has to get called 3 times as often as an all-in to have even the same profitability, so it needs to get called like 3.5 times more often, which it's kind of hard to have a bet get called 3.5 times more often than another bet, especially when stacks are short. So I really don't like the small bet unless it's used very exploitatively to try to take advantage of something the opponent does, which is not fold to small bets. But in this spot, I actually really like checking. And the reason I like checking is because if the opponent does have a queen or a jack, they are probably going to consider folding to a river all in, right? And I don't want to let the opponents fold. And if the opponent has a busted draw, whether it be heart draw or flush draw, heart draw or spade draw, if I check, they at least have the opportunity to bluff. Whereas if I jam all in, they do not have the opportunity to bluff because they can't make me fold because I put them all in. So in this scenario, if our opponent does have a hand like queen jack, he's probably going to put his money in no matter what he has. Obviously, if I'm beat by one of the straights, or I guess a set, such as life, it's not going to happen all that often, so we're definitely not trying to get away here. The real question is, how do we get the marginal hands to put in money? And I just think we're going to have a tough time with that in general. And also, how do we get our opponent to bluff? And the only way to get the opponent to bluff is to check. If there were a lot of marginal hands that could call a bet, then perhaps, often betting will make more sense. Or if you know your opponent will literally never bluff, then betting also makes sense because there's no point in checking because it's just going to go check every time, right? So anyway, in this scenario, I do check. The opponent goes all in. We snap it up. And he had the ace-10 of spades. So one of the few hands that we do lose to, and that's always a bit of a bummer. Every once in a while, you will run into it, and that is okay. So many people get it in their minds that they are supposed to make the, they call it the correct fold on the river whenever they happen to be beat. But realize, if you're folding king-jack here, you are playing way too tightly. I mean, we are thrilled to call it off here unless we know our opponent is just like the weakest, tightest nit I've ever played with. And I don't have any notes saying he's the weakest, tightest nit I've ever played with. So easy call. Sometimes you're going to lose. That's going to be it for today. Hope you enjoyed this video for Poker News. Again, click like, click subscribe, tell your friends. Thank you very much for being here. Good luck in your games. Have fun. And I'll talk to you next week.